An anonymous man spoke with CNN to share for the first time the emotional and psychological toll that he says he endured from alleged abuse by Sean Diddy Combs. The man, identified as John Doe, he filed a complaint on October 14th, alleging that he was drugged and sexually assaulted by Combs at one of the music mogul's white parties nearly 2 decades ago. In his first on-camera interview, Doe disclosed that he has kept the alleged 2000 incident a secret for years. Representative for Combs declined to comment on the allegations. Doe's complaint is one of several filed by anonymous accusers represented by attorney Tony Busby and Andrew Van Arsdale. The lawyers have stated they are representing at least 120 people planning to file cases against Combs. So far, 20 civil suits have been filed. Well, Dr. Walker, I don't think that it is going to get any better. Certainly, we're going to hear simply more details that are going to be, quite frankly, tied to Jay-Z. Because when you think about Sean Combs and everything that everyone is talking about, now you're hearing the story of the two Seans.
Yeah, and so one of the things I want to say first is that we have to acknowledge that sexual violence of any kind is against the law, and those individuals should be prosecuted if found guilty. It really does. It is troubling hearing all these allegations, particularly as someone, who, grew up before hip hop was rap music. And when you see, particularly, I'm going to be frank, Black men, these kind of accusations are really troubling. And so you just highlighted that, there's so far there have been 20 or so individuals that have literally come forward or filed charges, or some kind of civil charges, but more than 100 individuals they believe were victims of sexual assault. And that's an incredible number of people. And we also have to acknowledge that number could increase. So what I would say is that we, not only in terms of, I don't want to say it's just hip hop, because we know that, musical artists are, in the past have been, accused of various of these kind of accusations. But, we do have a general conversation about sexual violence and specifically those with power, because I think, while, Sean Combs is a Black man, and we've heard the alleged allegations relating to Jay-Z, we have to see how that plays out. But we have to have a conversation about how, power and sexual assault intersect. And then when you layer it over that, like I said, there's need to be a conversation among brothers about, if you see something, this is saying, if you see something, say something. You can't just be idly by and, watch people be victims of sexual assault. We know that so many people may have not participated, but certainly were aware of these allegations for decades and did nothing about that. And that is we can't have that kind of silence, culture of silence when it comes to sexual assault.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Malveaux, Dr. Walker brings up a very good point in that this does continue to open the door in the conversation about sexual assault. I will say it feels a little different than when we were in the height of the Me Too movement, even though certainly people are aware of what they should and should not be doing. Do you get a sense that the spirit that was behind the Me Too movement is still alive? Or are we living in a different culture now with a new president several years later, and just a different lens that we might be perhaps looking at cases like this? Dr. Walker?
Yeah, I could jump in and respond.
Okay,
no
sure.
No problem. So I'm still here. So I think that, you hit a highlighted point, really important point is relating to the Me Too movement. And listen, like I said, we had to have a conversation about sexual assault. Because, unfortunately, each year there are thousands of these cases that go unreported. And so I think that the Me Too movement is an extension, certainly, of the feminist movement and the fight for, bodily autonomy by women. But I think that, as we move forward and things evolve, just like we saw from the civil rights movement and what it is today, while we don't have the same, maybe necessarily use the same terminology to describe why these issues are important, because we have to protect individuals in our, we know, family and friends, members of our community. We have to protect them from sexual assault because, like I said, we know this happens frequently in our country, often by people very well. And so we have to have one standard. We can't allow this code of silence to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we have a little bit of sound from the person who's filing these charges. I believe I saw that pop up. If we do have that sound, we can run it now to hear what this accuser said on CNN.
According to your lawsuit, you were hired by a security firm to work security at one of the infamous white parties that was thrown by Sean Combs in the Hamptons. What was that experience like?
At first, he was incredibly friendly, very gracious.
So you had a friendly chat, and then according to your lawsuit, at some point later in the night, Sean Combs himself offered you a drink. This didn't come from staff or someone holding a tray of drinks. It came from him directly.
Correct. The first drink started to have some effect on me. And I just thought, wow, these are really strong drinks. It wasn't until the second drink, and it was already too late, that I realized that there was something wrong with the drinks.
This man who came on CNN, he shared his experience and the psychological, emotional, physical abuse that he had allegedly at the hands of Sean Combs. This goes back to 2007. As we know, there have been 20 civil lawsuits that have been filed, but there have been attorneys out there filing potentially over 100 more that will be coming. We heard a little bit of sound from this man before we went to the break. Dr. Malveaux, I wanted your thoughts about this man who is coming forward, what this means for Sean Combs. And as I said before, we're now talking about two Seans. A lot of people are talking about them all in the same breath: Sean Carter, Sean Combs, and just the implications of people who will be coming forward. I'm sure there are more to come, Dr. Malveaux.
Oh, there absolutely are. What we see is apparently just a freak show going on. People who felt like they could do whatever they want to do to other people with no consequences. I think Dr. Walker made the point earlier about needing to have a conversation about domestic violence or basically sexual abuse. I mean, the tragedy here, Candace, is that we were abused as Black people, as enslaved people. I just finished reading a blurb about a book where it talked about how white men routinely raped Black men who were enslaved. And this is something we don't really talk about. We don't really talk about sexual abuse and how it happens and the power dynamic therein. So this gentleman who's come forward, I mean, lots of people are going to have lots of things to say. You know, why did he wait so long? Well, we know why people wait so long. They're frightened. They're intimidated. They don't want to come out there. Once one person comes out, it starts cascading. And you find yourself, well, that happened to me too. Well, that happened to me too. That's why the Me Too movement was so powerful. But I think that we in the Black community, if we put ourselves out there as more moral, more upstanding, and better, then we have to be good enough to have a conversation with our brothers, with our sisters. Women can be abusers as well. Have conversations about why this is happening, how we stop it. Jay-Z was very moving, I thought, when he talked about the fact that he has kids, that his kids are the age of these people who were abused. And he said, well, you know, if you really think we did that, not we, because he doesn't use himself, but if this was done, then you ought to have criminal charges. And I agree with him. I mean, there is no statute limitation on rape. And so if indeed these are claims that are not baseless, bring it on. And let's expose this stuff. Let's just, people always talk about dirty laundry. Let's take that dirty laundry and hang it on a clothesline to see what's going on, because we can't have this in our community as we talk about building our community, as we talk about recovering from enslavement, as we talk about, let's say I doing this research on lynching, and the book is so delayed because sometimes I'll read something and I have to go to bed. I mean, it's just some of the stuff is too much deep. Really? And so this is part of a continuum. And we as Black people cannot swim in muddy water without getting dirty. And so America is built on predatory capitalism, on patriarchy, on toxic patriarchy, and we swim in that same water. So there are Black men and women who have been abusers, and we know that. But this is heartbreaking when you hear this man's voice, and I know it's artificially blah, 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 but reading between the lines, you do understand that there is pain. And in our communities, there's pain. We have rape and incest in our communities. There is pain. We can thrive as a people until we unpack the pain.
You know, Dr. Walker, certainly there's the court of public opinion, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the contrast between how Sean Combs responded to Sean Carter. Seemed as if he jumped on the case, got some of his thoughts out there very, very quickly. I wouldn't say that his reputation hasn't been damaged, but certainly it seems like it's in more control. And I'm wondering about your thoughts about his response.
So I would just, from my perspective, and I've had conversations with, the allegations against Jay-Z, and particularly is that let it play out. And, he has attorneys. There's attorney he's alleging is acted improperly. So my perspective is to see how it plays out. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the allegations against Sean Combs, if for any of us who follow hip hop, they're not surprising. Because those, you've heard those kind of rumors for years, and obviously it'll play out in a court of law eventually. But anytime you hear these allegations of sexual assault, for me, is troubling and heartbreaking. And I think it's important once again that we recognize that those individuals who've been victimized deserve a day in court or compensation, and also we have to acknowledge their humanity and the trauma they've been through. But we also have to recognize that we have a judicial system. And so, my perspective is certainly that I'm, look forward to the individuals who've been victimized having their day in court of law. And then over the next couple of months, certainly we'll see how this plays out, whether it's, as it relates to, legally or these civil cases in terms of, who's telling the truth and who's not.
Mm-hmm. Dr.
Candace,
Walker,
one thing I'd like to jump in real quickly. This is not a hip hop thing. This is not about hip hop. I mean, I'm finding that some of the majority media tries to make this into a black thing. The fact in the entertainment industry is that we see abuse. People are eager to get in there, get out there, get their stuff out there, and they're willing to make the kind of moral compromises that they probably shouldn't. And so therefore, they make themselves vulnerable. Not blaming the victim, but I'm just saying. But I object to the fact that they're trying to make this a hip hop thing. If you go to opera, you have stories about opera and how the divas in opera were exploited. Horrible stories in opera. We can look at classical music and see some of the same things. So let's just not jump into this is hip hop thing. Now, what's his name? Puffy? Whatever.
Yes,
he calls
Sean
himself.
Combs. Sure.
Okay. I mean, he's got a reputation. We've all heard the reputation, and that's just that. He's done some horrible things on tape, So that's just that. But he is not hip hop. There's some wonderfully talented hip hop artists, and we don't want to tar them with the same brush, because we do know that when there are unequal levels of power, those who have the most power are able to exploit those who have the least amount of power. And often it's an incoming artist who would do anything to get his or her record on the air and would, just saying, this does happen. So, like I said, I don't do hip hop. I'm too old, but I do have many young people who love hip hop, and I just don't want us to jump into this is hip hop thing because Puffy and Jay-Z are both being accused. Let's look at who's been accused in opera. Let's look at who's been accused, in classical. They're the stories of exploitation in the entertainment industry have no color.
Dr. Malveaux, I'm sure there's one hip hop song you like. Come on, we're gonna have to work on that. But let me talk to you, Dr. Walker, because it sounds like you have and do listen to hip hop. And I'm just wondering about, as Dr. Malveaux said, this is not about hip hop. But when we think about the Russell Simmons and the Two Seans and how they do represent hip hop in such a big way. Do you think that this is going to leave a stain on its legacy, or do you get that it's making people have a bad mouth about hip hop as a whole because of the way that it is being sold? They are being sold as these representatives of the larger.
Yeah, so I think this is important, right? Because I'm a hip hop fan. I grew up in Philly, 80s and 90s, listen to hip hop. Okay. I still listen to hip hop, artists. So I would definitely describe myself as a a long-term hip hop fan, someone who's been listening to music for a long time. So I think that Dr. Malveaux is absolutely right. So societally, generally, from a larger level, we have a serious issue with sexual assault as a nation, and obviously we can go international when we talk about this issue. And it is a troubling part of the human condition that we need to eradicate. So, and then when you take it down a little further, absolutely, the music industry has a long, troubling history, rock and roll, and not only in terms of some things we've heard now in other forms of genres, but we've also heard victims coming forward in those various other forms of kind of music. And for me specifically, as someone who grew up before it was hip hop, when it was rap music, and then Jay-Z and Sean Combs are contemporaries in terms of the same age group, and certainly and so that's why for me in particular, having this conversation is so important, because there have been particularly from Black women over the last several years who said that some of the lyrics from some hip hop artists that are troubling and misogynistic. So I think that this is part of the conversation we need to have. And look, I'm saying it as a Black man that we need to make sure we have these conversations to make sure we protect people, particularly Black women, from sexual assault. And like I said, we had to have a conversation about, masculinity, what it means to be a man, particularly what it means to be a Black man in our society, and what we need to do to make sure we protect Black women. And if brothers are not behaving properly, then we need to check them at the door.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you help build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on Start Engine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.